Hello and welcome to the Waynesburg Effect, the only political talk show on WCTV. Today our panelists will be diving into three topics. We'll start with a recap of the midterm elections, discussing who the winners and losers were on the night. Then we'll switch gears to the recent mass shooting in a Pittsburgh synagogue, along with mass shootings that are taking place all across America, and discuss how to handle this crisis. Finally, we will wrap up by talking about big personalities in American politics who have emerged from both the left and the right. I'm your host, Drew Rhea, joined on the desk by Mike Capelli, Jared Weicker, and Antonio Palullo. Relax, get comfortable, and get ready to enjoy some heated political debates here on the Waynesburg Effect.
You don't know what's going to happen with the hurricane. You cannot predict its path.
And he didn't clearly understand what his job was there to do.
And that's sad because he's just a statistic now.
Total lunacy.
It's an alarming statistic.
That ended up winning the National League to face the Red Sox in the World Series.
But clearly he didn't understand the context of the speech.
If you haven't heard me talk about this yet, I'm sorry.
Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
The midterm elections have concluded, and big picture, nothing wandered from the expected outcome. The Democrats took the House, the Republicans kept the Senate. However, there were some competitive races individually and enough news to spark debate. So, Jared, I'll ask you, what stood out the most to you personally about this 2018 midterm election?
Well, the thing that stood out to me the most was Ocasio-Cortez winning and coming out that she couldn't afford an apartment when she's a socialist with the premise that people's money needs to be regulated and redistributed when she can't even take care of her own money. I mean, it's a disgrace. She isn't qualified to be in Congress, and her voters are political robots that just voted for her because she's a socialist, just like Bernie Sanders supporters did. And also the Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke showed that the overall population still doesn't accept far leftist ideas, and that Texans still want a growing and booming economy.
So first, O'Rourke, do you know which demographic he won over Ted Cruz? Residents who were born and lived in Texas. Ted Cruz won in residents who moved to Texas. So on top of that, so the state of Texas wants O'Rourke. Yeah, you're right. The American people who moved into a state that they're not from wanted Ted Cruz. Then on top of Cortez, yeah, she can't afford to because it's expensive, and shows the ideas that the rich are the only people that can really run for politics because they can afford to pay for those things. They can afford to pay for these hotels. When in reality, it's kind of unfair to the average person. They can't afford two homes. She has to have a home in her home district and then one apartment in Washington that she can always come back and forth from. It's just completely unfair for you to assume that just because she can't pay $3,500, which is a lot of money for an apartment in Washington, D.C.
Jeez. Yeah, I wasn't going to harp too much on that, but I was going to focus more here in Pennsylvania. Bob Casey is happy with the gains that Democrats have made on health care. He's also advocating for a bipartisan solution to the crumbling infrastructure in America, and he's concerned about the acting attorney general endangering the Mueller investigation. Just a few things locally here in Pennsylvania. Overall, though, Democrats gaining seats in the House, estimated net gain of 38 seats, which is the most recent estimates that I have found. However, Democrats did lose seats in the Senate. Right now it's one seat, but it'll most likely change after the Florida race is decided. Drew?
Yeah, so I want to get you guys' input on the voter turnout this election cycle. In Texas, there was a 46% turnout. That's 14 points above their average. Minnesota had the highest state turnout with 64%, and Georgia with 55%, which was 21 points above their average. So what did you guys see, whether it be, the Get Out and Vote campaign or, the results of people actually voting? What did you see regarding voter turnout?
I think that was probably the best part about this election cycle is that people actually came out to vote. They cared. They came out to care. I mean, you look at in situations where they were in Georgia where you had to wait 3 to 4 hours just to vote. I mean, that's ridiculous. But people still waited in line all night to vote because they cared, because this stuff matters. And I think it's a great sign for our democratic system that, hey, people care. Whether Republican or Democrat, I think it was a great sign for politics in general. on both the left and the right, and even if you're an independent, I thought it was a great site. And I think the total, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the countrywide turnout was 49%, 50%, somewhere around there, which is just, I mean, obviously you'd like to see 100%, and I think in the future we might have to change some laws to make it easier to vote, but I think overall it is a really good sign.
Yeah, I agree with you, Antonio. I think voter turnout was amazing this year. And you mentioned something, Minnesota, 64% voter turnout. I think that's how it should be always. 100% of the time, no matter what election, there should be that much voter turnout in any election, because we are electing these people to represent us. Jared.
Yeah, I think this was a result from the presidential election in 2016, when a lot of people just assumed, that Hillary would win and didn't even come out. And maybe even on both sides, Republicans. I mean, the total turnout for that election was way down, and it shows that people realize their mistake and they want to get back involved.
And you know what was a great sign from this voter turnout is that you saw more women elected. I mean, whether it is a Republican, Democrat, we saw first 2 Muslim women elected. We saw Cortez elected. I mean, it was just great to see these women elected because they finally have their representation. They have their voice. I mean, this isn't a country filled with old white guys, as many of you know, Congress is filled with. This is a country filled with a lot of different people and a lot of different races. And to see in Minnesota, especially, that 64% of people said, 64% of people came out, and they said, we don't care what your race is, we don't care what your religion is, we don't care what your sex is. We care about your politics, we care about your policies. And elected a Muslim woman to Congress is a great sign.
And there's a lot of new faces in Congress this year. 104 members won't be returning, and largely the biggest population that's coming in is women. And I think that's a great sign.
Yeah, I think anytime in Congress when you have a big turnover, I think it's better to get new, fresh faces in and a new perspective as opposed to people, racking up the years. Real quick, I want to dive into the effect that this will have on the new Congress with the Dems winning the House and the Republicans winning or adding seats to their Senate lead. How do you guys feel this will affect the next 2 years in politics?
Yeah, I think overall it was a victory for the Democrats, gaining 36 seats. But although I think it was a victory for them, I think Republicans still really didn't lose a whole lot because they still have the Senate. They can still, shoot down anything brought up by the House, and in case, the Democrats get a bright idea of trying to impeach Trump.
Well, I believe now that because the Democrats have control of Congress, they can now they can subpoena Trump for his tax records. I believe that's what it is. They can also protect the Mueller investigation a little bit more. So that's a good sign for at least the Democratic side if you're interested, if you care about those things, because obviously there's a lot of controversy over Trump. So the Democrats winning the Congress was a great sign. And even though they didn't win the House, I don't think a lot of people expected them to win the House. I think a lot of people knew that that's probably where they're going to fall short. There's the chance they win in Florida. A lot of people thought they would win in Texas. So those are 2 kind of disappointing results.
I think the way the race is shaped out is reflective of how tough the Senate map was for Democrats. I think it was a lot tougher for them than Republicans.
Well, regardless of how it plays out, I do know that this will be a very, very entertaining 2 years in politics. When we come back, we're going to jump into the ongoing debate about gun control in the United States. Stay tuned. You're watching The Waynesburg Effect.
You're watching The Buzz, your place for all things Waynesburg. I'm Lindsay Stinger, your campus news host.
My name is Brian Bauer.
I'm Andrew Sloboda, your entertainment host.
My name is Corey Tretinik, and I'm here with this week's entertainment news.
On campus. And remember, it's all of your beeswax.
It's all of your beeswax. Remember, it's all of your beeswax.
Welcome to Watch This. I'm Brennan Rossi.
And I'm Chris Hulse.
On this show, we look at all of the national movies and TV shows that are making shockwaves throughout the society.
Join us as we review and preview Hollywood's best and worst.
On Watch This.
Welcome back to the Waynesburg Effect. As more mass shootings occur across the United States, thought leaders on both sides are struggling with what to do to combat this issue. Mike, where do you stand on the issue of gun control?
I kind of go back and forth with this all the time because I grew up hunting, so I obviously had to use a rifle there, but I am totally 100% against assault rifles. I don't think there's any place for them in society, really and truly, because there's the gun deaths in 2018, there's been 12,759 deaths related to guns in just this year. 311 mass shootings, one more recently in Pittsburgh. And President Trump already said that the Pittsburgh shooting could have been prevented if there was more protection at the synagogue. And that really doesn't sit well with me because the synagogue has three main purposes. It's a house of prayer, a house of assembly, and a house of study. Nowhere in that should there be room for guns, anywhere. There's about 40% of Americans say they own or live in a household with a gun, which is not a very surprising statistic, seeing as how a lot of people are hunters or target shooters or something like that. But then you get these fanatics that have to go out and buy assault rifles because they feel like everyone's out to get them, and they start stockpiling weapons, trying to build up a militia, and that's where it doesn't start to sit well with me.
Now, Mike, I want to sort of ask a follow-up question on your point about synagogues. Now, California, which has the most gun control laws in the United States, many synagogues in California actually have some type of armed security. So how do you feel about, whether it be outside of the synagogue? I obviously see your point about having guns and weapons inside the synagogue, but how do you feel about security outside?
If it's I can rationalize that. I could say there could be a use for it. However, I think in any religious setting, whether it be a synagogue, a church, anything like that, it's just hard to imagine guys sitting out there, armed security guards sitting out there waiting for someone to go shoot up a church or a synagogue. And for me, it just does not sit well.
How do you guys feel about it?
I'd like to ask you, Mike, what do you identify as an assault rifle?
A gun that's semi-automatic, a gun that's fully automatic, a rifle that is used to assault people.
Okay, interesting definition. But assault rifles are not actually one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings. It's actually handguns, and there's many reports out there, but the minimum for that is 80% handguns used in those shootings, and many reports even have higher percentages. In terms of the assault rifle, as it is, it's the term assault rifle isn't really a good use of the word because most of the weapons, like the AR-15, that's people love to hate on. I mean, obviously it's bad when it's used in a shooting, but I mean it shoots a .223 round. It's a very small round. There's way bigger and worse guns that can be used. I mean, you could just look at cars. Cars are more dangerous than guns. A gun can be used passively, like if it were to be resting on your hip. Anytime you use a vehicle, you put other people's lives in danger. That's not to say, of course, you get idiots that, like to cause mass shootings, but I mean, in terms of the greater good for everybody, I just don't see gun control as a good idea. Because when you take guns away from law-abiding citizens, it just lets criminals overrun. Because criminals don't care about gun laws. That's why they have them in the first place. Because if you're a felon, you can't even get a gun. So they obviously have guns because they get them through other ways.
So just think about it like this: every time the mass shooting happens, the Onion Post is a very accurate article with a quote as the headline. Well, there was no way to prevent this from happening, says the only country where this continuously happens. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's I don't understand why we're picking guns over people. Yes, there are law-abiding citizens that save guns. So I don't understand why we just continuously protect the guns over the people. I saw a tweet, I still think it's accurate. When we saw 20 plus small children die in a shooting in an elementary school, and nothing was done after that, That was the moment we knew nothing would ever be changed. And on top of that, now you see companies are starting to profit off of mass shootings. You know what they're doing? Now they have systems where companies are charging schools like protections. Like I saw was you would build like a steel fort in the corner of the classroom students could go to if there was a shooting. Another one was I saw a dog that dogs are training to run after shooting victims when they're in a school. I mean, like, why are we trying to profit off of this idea instead of just preventing it? I mean, even if most people support stricter gun laws and background checks, why are we fighting these things? It just makes no sense. It's so frustrating.
Jared, I want to ask you something. Are you familiar with the Port Arthur massacre?
No, you can inform me.
So the Port Arthur massacre is the deadliest mass shooting in Australian history. 35 dead, 23 injured. And as a result of that, the Australian government restricted private ownership of semi-automatic rifles, semi-auto shotguns, and pump-action shotguns. And uniform licensing is required now for anyone to own a gun in Australia. And license holders must possess a genuine reason for owning a license and owning a gun. And guess what's not included on that list of reasons? Self-defense. Because you have all these people in America who claim to buy these guns so they can protect them and they can protect their families. And to me, that is not a genuine reason, because most people, like, if they're going to break into your house, they don't want to kill you. They're not your enemy. They want your TV. They want some of the fancy items you have in your house. They're not out to specifically get you. And that's the thing that I struggle with I go back and forth with all the time. And studies have shown that in Australia, because the gun laws have been effective and have reduced mass shootings, reduced gun suicides, and have reduced armed crime. And if you want to compare the numbers a little bit between Australia and the United States, because they are different countries, in the U.S. there are 11 times more murders with firearms than in Australia. There are 6 times more violent gun crimes in the U.S. than in Australia. There are 4 times more intentional homicides in the U.S. than in Australia. And there's 57 times more murders in general in the U.S.
Okay, well, first of all, Australia compared to the U.S. from a population basis is just crazy. Australia has, what, like 36 million people? The U.S. has like 10 times as many of that. Like, that's not even realistic. And of course there's going to be more gun crimes in the U.S. because Australia bans guns. According to the CDC, the firm that Obama
they didn't ban guns. They didn't ban guns in general. They banned semi-automatic rifles, semi-auto shotguns, and pump-action shotguns. You can still buy other types of guns because there are other types of guns out there. They didn't ban guns in general.
No, you can't. No, you're not allowed to own guns in Australia. After that, they did that for those guns, but now you can't. But the CDC found that firearms on a yearly basis, it's hard to measure those incidents because most firearms in self-defense aren't actually used. But 500,000 to over 3 million times a firearm is used in self-defense. That means at the minimum there is just as many cases for guns used in defense as there is for guns used in crime. And if you use the 3 million figure, which is the smallest out of that, I mean, the use of firearms in defense is just as many as firearms used in crime. So obviously you need something to protect yourself.
Well, no matter where you stand as far as how we solve this problem, I think we can all agree that it is a problem that needs solved. When we come back, we will discuss the role of big personalities in politics. Keep it here. You're watching The Waynesburg Effect.
Welcome into another edition of Jagged Sports Weekly.
Homecoming game against Carnegie Mellon. And finally, Hugh, we're starting to see this offense put together some drives and really...
We kind of saw the offense just compile together and have a great showing. Chad Walker, 61 rushing yards and a touchdown. And the receivers, it just wasn't one main guy. It was Cole Booth, Joan...
25-23 and 25-18. But perhaps the biggest takeaway in that match, all of whom had season highs. They only had one block in the entirety of the match.
We run our best race at regionals, we can make it to nationals.
Continuously see him. We saw him a couple weeks ago. Game-clinching interception for the football team.
Hello and welcome to The Journey, WCTV's only faith-based program.
Over the course of this semester, we are going to walk with students through their daily lives and take a look at how faith impacts them.
Please Take a half hour, sit down, and relax with us as we go on a journey with students, staff, and residents of Waynesburg.
As we head towards 2020, many are calling for big personalities such as Ben Shapiro and Oprah Winfrey to run for office. Antonio, do you believe having big personalities in politics is a good thing, or should we be reverting back to career politicians to run the White House?
I don't think, first of all, I don't think anybody who has not studied politics, has not gone after a political degree, have not studied the art in the finest ways, have not tried to really become focused on politics, should not run for office. Oprah should not. Ben Shapiro should not. None of these people should not run for office who have not held political office. If you need to start at the bottom. You need to experience the low-level type things. Barack Obama famously ran a campaign and famously became president because he said, I worked my way up the ladder. He started off in communities, and then he became a professor, and he just worked, and he understood. He was a constitutional lawyer. He knew these things. He understood these things. He respected these things. And now you have these people like Oprah saying that, like, oh, I'll run. The Rock even said he would consider running, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's just, these people should not run for office. It's so frustrating because they're now guiding the political discourse in whether a positive or negative view. They're just guiding it away from what it needs to be. As much as we love the phrase, drain the swamp, even Trump hasn't drained the swamp. Everybody he's hired has been career politicians or people who have been in politics their whole life, rather giving money to politicians or being in office themselves.
Now, Antonio, I agree with you as far as The Rock and Oprah, but Ben Shapiro graduated from UCLA with a degree in political science at the age of 17, and then Harvard Law at the age of 20. How do you feel about people like that just haven't been practicing politics, who have been sort of observing it from the outside in other fields, running for office?
And those people are 1,000 times more scarier than Oprah because there's a low chance. I mean, we saw Trump win, and I know, you don't say never until it happens, but there's a low chance Oprah or The Rock actually run. Ben Shapiro, he's never actually worked in lower level politics. He's gained all the reputation and all the respect by never working at those lower levels. He doesn't know what it's like to tell somebody, like, we just financially cannot afford to do this. He's going around saying, like, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And you know what? He might be. But he doesn't know what it's like to have to tell somebody, yeah, there's nothing we can do, or I'm trying my best and I just can't get results. And that's what being a politician is. Sometimes you got to make the hard decisions, and sometimes a hard decision hurts. And I don't think Ben Shapiro, who goes around just trying to promote his ideals and what he believes, whether you agree with it or disagree, it just doesn't help that he's just going around doing this, because now you're just adding to the more conflict to the problem.
Okay, although he's never actually held office or been a politician, how is he supposed to, he's supposed to gain experience by doing that? It's like the age-old thing, right? Students from college try to apply for a job, and the job say, oh, we need experience. But then the student turns around and say, well, how am I going to get experience if nobody's going to hire me? I mean, that's the same point for saying that for people like Ben Shapiro. How are they supposed to get experience when you don't want them to? Are you going to, when you leave here, are you going to apply for a job, CEO job, or are you going to apply for a low-level entry position? Well, I would try for the best job. Who wouldn't want the best job?
You're saying you're not, if you don't get a CEO job, you're not going to accept it?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay,
you asked me what I would try, if I would try for a higher job or a lower job, and I said, of course I would try for a higher job. Who wouldn't want the better job?
I didn't ask for lower or higher. I said entry level or CEO.
Okay, that's higher and lower. Everybody knows that a CEO is higher than the janitor. Come on.
The CEO is the president. So you're saying that you could be right out of college without any actual political experience. You could be top of the line. You're telling me that right now.
Not me personally, but there's people that have. That's politics.
And how often do those people truly succeed?
Well, I mean, you'd have to look at them individually. You're not naming anybody.
It's very limited examples of people who jump from the lowest level, just the entry level, to the very top. I mean, you want to talk about, Trump is a perfect example of, whether you agree with the politics or not, he's done a lot of things that presidents don't normally do, and people on the left and right have criticized him for it. I just think, hold a lower level political office, because if Ben Shapiro wins a seat, that means that anybody can do that. And that's not good for the American politics.
Anybody should be able to win a seat. I don't understand. It doesn't matter if you start at the low or not.
it does matter, because then it sets the standard that you don't need the experience, and that's problematic.
You get voted by people you get elected by for people voting for you. So it doesn't matter where you start. It's about who supports you and who votes for you.
It's just problematic.
Well, when we come back, we'll have our annual commentary section. You're watching The Waynesburg Effect.
Can I help you? Oh, I'm depression. I've come for you. What? Depression. You know, the thing that makes people angry. I keep them up at night. Oh, I give them anxiety. You know, I get up on their heads. That's crazy. I know. The government likes to think that I'm a mental illness. Well, then shouldn't you be wearing a cape? Why? So people could see me coming? No, I've got 12.6% of American college students already. There's no one I can't get.
For more information, visit www.acha.org.
Stress can affect every part of life. It cripples your ability to concentrate, causes you to feel fatigued, and drains your energy. When stress affects the brain with its many nerve connections, the rest of the body feels the impact as well. Exercise and other physical activity produces endorphins, chemicals in the brain that act as natural painkillers, and improve the ability to sleep, which in turn reduces stress. Even 5 minutes of aerobic exercise can stimulate anti-anxiety effects. For more ways to reduce stress, visit Anxiety and Depression Association of America's website at www.adaa.org.
Welcome back to the Waynesburg Effect. We are back with our commentary section. Antonio, let's start with you.
Yes, my beloved Philadelphia Eagles are 4-5 on the season. And yes, they were booed as they left the field for Lincoln Financial. Well, I just gotta say, I am a pro-booer. My grandfather booed, my father booed, I will boo, and my children will boo. I don't care that we just won the Super Bowl. We have expectations. If not now, then this is probably the peak amount of expectations we've ever had as a team. So, of course, I'm going to boo. And I'm disappointed that people are attacking the Philadelphia fans for booing. Because you know what? This team played awful, and we deserve to boo. Because that's what we do. We boo, boo, boo.
Okay, Jared?
Well, I guess maybe continuing the booing motion. But, I mean, we just got our first snow out there. You know, people are already excited about Christmas. But I'm saying Thanksgiving's around the corner, people, all right? Christmas does not start until after Thanksgiving, all right? I want a time to eat a bunch of food, have an excuse to take a nap, do nothing. I mean, Thanksgiving is very underrated. It's a great time. Get the family, you know, eat a lot of food, have a good time. Christmas does not start until after Thanksgiving.
I think that's something we can finally agree on. I don't think Christmas should start until after Thanksgiving. But with the midterm elections come and gone, I just want to re-emphasize the importance of voting. You know, we elect these people to represent us, so why shouldn't we go out there and cast our votes? And I think the next election that comes up, if you have the opportunity, go out and vote. Because, you know, like in Minnesota, they had a 64% voter turnout. I think that's something that every state should have. So go out and vote when you get the chance.
And to add on to that real quick, Michael, I think that a lot of people need to realize the importance of this year's election. 2019 has a big election, a lot of local judge spots, you know, local mayor, whole lot of stuff, good stuff. Get out and vote. For my commentary, I just want to talk a little bit about political pins. I got this one yesterday at the Ben Shapiro event in Pittsburgh. Political pins are so underrated, rarely used anymore for big campaigns, but I mean, they're a keepsake. They're something that you can hold on to forever. I see pins from the 50s and 60s at like flea markets. My friend collects them. I mean, that's something that you can hold on to forever, to whether the campaign won or the campaign lost. It's something that you can really hold on to and remember those times, or even just tell a cool story to your kids. Well, thank you for watching The Waynesburg Effect. Tune in next time for more political debate and fun. Merry Christmas, everyone. This has been The Waynesburg Effect.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.